Hi everyone, welcome to this Provar webinar, What's New in Provar Winter 20. Thank you for joining. Today we're excited to be talking more about Provar's latest features and sharing a bit about how you can take advantage of these on your own projects. So we'll start off with some introductions. My name is Hetty Boardman-Weston and I'm Head of Marketing here at Provar. Presenting with me today, I'm very happy to welcome my colleagues Richard Clark and Michael Daly, and I'll be passing over to Richard in a minute to start things off. If we take a quick look at the agenda then, we're going to start by reviewing the Salesforce Winter 20 release and highlighting some of the key changes that might impact you. After that, we'll spend some time talking about the new features that Provar's released, and we'll do some demos of those features as well. And then finally, I'll be sharing a little bit of news on a new development for our customers, which is our new Provar Success Community. This is replacing Provar's existing service desk solution, and it's designed to give customers a new and more streamlined way of accessing your support options, so service desk and also other customer areas such as your downloads. And then following on from that, we'll have a bit of time for questions. And to that end, if you would like to ask a question at any point during this webinar content, please feel free to do so. The best way to do that is to type it out into the questions box, and I will pick up as many of these as I can at the end of the session. All in all, the webinar will last about 45 minutes, and it is being recorded as well. So I'll make sure that the video recording is sent round to everyone tomorrow in case you'd like to watch it again or share it with your team. So a few more plugs from me before we jump into the content. Firstly, just to make you aware of a few upcoming events where you can meet the Provar team. We have Inspire East this Friday in Cambridge, which is a great little community event, and then two slightly larger events, Dreamforce in November, and also we'll be attending the inaugural Trailhead DX India event, which is coming up in December. On the subject of Dreamforce, do let us know if you are planning to attend, and please come by our stands to say hello. We'll be in the Customer Expo and we'll also be in the Trailhead area all week during the conference. We're also participating in a few really exciting talks, and I'd especially like to draw your attention to the first talk on the list. This is a really nice short discovery session where we'll be giving a bit of an introduction to Provar and also sharing some customer success stories of effective Provar projects. So this is a really good discovery talk to come to if you're exploring or evaluating Provar, or if you know anyone who's interested to learn a bit more about what we do. We're still waiting for confirmation of where and when that talk is going to be, but we'll share that information out as soon as we have it. And so just a final word from me, we are still currently accepting applications for the Provar Salesforce BST pilot program. So this is a pilot program that we've been running with Salesforce to run our customers' tests during Salesforce's official pre-release testing. So if you're interested in potentially being a part of this pilot and you'd like to know more, just follow the link on screen now to learn a bit more about your eligibility criteria and how you can apply. We're also running a session about this at Dreamforce, so do get in touch with us if you'd like an invitation to that session. Okay, so that's it from me. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Richard to start us off.
Thank you, Hetty. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. So I'm going to talk to you about what you need to know about Winter 20 as QA team members, rather than trying to go through several hundred pages of release notes. So I'm just picking out the highlights if you're part of a QA team, part of a test team. So to start with, I want to just talk about the release cycles for both Salesforce and Provar. So those of you that are new to us in the last few months since our last webinar may not have seen this slide before, but we basically track all the Salesforce releases, so the 3 Salesforce releases per year. So if you're not familiar with what those are, with each major release, a summer, winter and spring release, Salesforce first do a pre-release, and for Winter 20 that was the 13th of August. And anyone joining the BST program gets access at that time, not on your own org, but a copy of your org on BST to the pre-release. So that's Salesforce with any known bugs, maybe not all the features before it's ready. And then we have the sandbox preview window. So that was the 7th of September that started. So that's when you can actually test within your own sandboxes in your own orgs. And then we have the window for production. So Winter 20 this weekend will start going into production for some of you, and next weekend for some of the others as well. So our Provar releases are generally aligned around when Salesforce make major changes, but we also make maintenance changes for any other items that crop up in between releases. Salesforce may do a patch or any other new features that we want to release. So we keep quite active with up to 12 releases per year ourselves, so we can make sure we're delivering new functionality. And as part of this, I'd like to call out, we do have a 1.9.13 release coming soon. That's mainly in terms of a maintenance release with some changes. Some customers will be receiving that soon, and we'll be publishing that, but it's not certainly not a mandatory release. Provar works fine just on 1.9.12. Following that, we're going to have our major release of the year, 2.0.1. So I'm really excited about this release, and we're going to be launching that at Dreamforce. So if you are coming to Dreamforce, you'll see the new Provar, and I've got more on this later we're going to talk about. And we're going to iterate through multiple 2.0 releases over the next 12 months, adding more and more functionality to that release and giving you an even better user experience. Just to also call out that Spring 20 release will be in Sandbox preview for the 4th of January. So we don't get much rest over Christmas periods and New Year's holidays, but there we go. So we make sure that we've got the 2.0.3 release with you prior to that, if you need to upgrade, which we assume that you might need to. And then the same again, looking further ahead to your summer holidays maybe, the 9th of May is the other key date to watch out for. So again, we'll make sure that any Provar updates you need are available to you prior to those Sandbox previews kicking in. So let's talk about some of those Winter 20 changes. The first one I want to highlight is a change that has affected some test tools, but does not affect Provar. So within the previous Summer 19 release, Salesforce made changes so that they introduced Shadow DOM within the page, within the HTML, occasionally. And this was a change they made after the Sandbox preview. They made it actually into production, into the production release, which is quite unusual. Now, at that time, we made some changes to Provar to make sure whether that those Shadow DOM elements, those slots appear in the HTML or not. Provar is now independent of that change. So Provar is unaffected on Winter 20, and if you're using 1.9.11, you can largely use it the same as 1.9.12 on Lightning, unless you're using custom Lightning components, in which case I recommend upgrading. What we have observed with Winter 20, excuse me, is that Salesforce appear to be currently undertaking some A/B testing. So for the same user in the same org, sometimes a page will render with Shadow DOM elements, sometimes it won't. So you need to be careful if you've got any custom page objects or anything you're doing in your own code, maybe you've got still using a coded framework, then you need to really consider about how you're accessing those elements and how you're going to maintain them going forward. So if you can update them as Aura by components, we do recommend that, and that way Provar will take care of the changes for you. So you're independent of any changes to the DOM. Or if you are using XPaths, then make sure if you update them, you know it's a temporary fix, or can reach out to one of our success consultants to find out how best to change your XPath to work in that scenario. Now, I'm pleased to announce we are working on a new Salesforce by locator for Provar 2.0. And what we're doing here is we're going to encapsulate all the different locators, whether it's Aura by, Lightning Web Components, the new Lightning layouts that are coming next year, probably Safe Harbor, and Visual Force locators, all in one locator. So you don't have to try and work out which one do I need to give you some consistency. The other change we're going to make is we're going to stop offering you Aura by as the first choice and stop offering it at all if it's not a supported base component. So what I mean by a base component is a tag starting Lightning : UI : or Force : for example. So those are base components. Moving on, the other big announcement was around Salesforce Mobile. So some of you may know this as Salesforce One. So within Winter 20, Salesforce have introduced a new profile stroke permission set setting called New Salesforce Mobile App. So your Salesforce admins can grant this to individual users to take advantage of the new Salesforce mobile experience. And if we look on the right-hand side, the first picture is what you would get in Salesforce Mobile today. So familiar view with your menu down the bottom. And on the right-hand side is how that will transform right now as soon as you switch on that new Salesforce mobile app experience. So it's actually the same app, it's a newer version, but it renders different HTML. So you'll see the navigation menus move to the top. We've got effectively our tabs that you would normally have in the desktop interface down the bottom. So Salesforce have aligned the mobile experience to be closer to the Lightning desktop experience. And they've also added more customization so that admins, rather than developers, can extend the application in the app builder, or as we know them as flexi pages. And they can do that in two ways. They can create a flexi page that is specific to a device type. And that device type is a phone or desktop. It's important to realize that a tablet is now treated as a desktop. So only phones is a device type, but your iPad is now a desktop. So you can create different flexi pages. You can create flexi pages that work on both phone and desktop, and you can create components, or you can set components to be visible based on that device type as well. So that's something I can see people will want to test. Now, sometime after Winter 20, Access File mobile browser is going to change. So Salesforce haven't given us a date. They've just said once they stop supporting it, it's going to change. So right now, if I switch on this new Salesforce mobile app and I try and access the mobile experience through a, say, Chrome emulation mode, or on device via the browser, say Safari on an iPad, I'm going to get the old experience even when new Salesforce mobile app is enabled. What Salesforce are going to do is that if you're on a phone, they're going to redirect you to download the Salesforce mobile app. They're not going to support the mobile experience within the browser anymore. In the tablets, you should get it rendered in a desktop mode. I don't know if that depends on whether it's landscape or portrait, but we'll see very shortly on that. Now, currently, Chrome emulation renders that original Salesforce 1, and Provar can be used to test Salesforce Mobile and Salesforce 1 through that Chrome emulation or via the browser on device. Now, it means that after Winter 20 at some point, you will not be able to reliably test that experience, and we don't know when it will change. We are waiting for an update from Salesforce on releasing a developer-signed app, which would allow us to use our Appium plugins to allow QA teams to test mobile applications of Salesforce 1. You can still test other mobile applications, things like Service Max, and this isn't a Provar change. Unfortunately, this is a change that Salesforce have made to Salesforce Mobile. If you are interested in testing Salesforce Mobile, and this is a blocker for you, we recommend that you get in touch with your customer success director or your account manager or partner account manager. Okay, on to other news then. Automatic lightning activation in Winter 20, as of this weekend. Salesforce will start switching users that are enabled for Lightning but running in Classic. They're going to switch them into Lightning every week. So they're going to keep switching Lightning mode on, Lightning user experience. So if you have test cases today that rely on using the same user and rely on the mode being Classic or Lightning and being left alone, or always being left in Classic, I think we should advise people to, and let Provar switch into Lightning, those are at risk as of Winter 20. And some of you would have already found this within the Sandbox preview. So our recommendation is to use separate logins for Classic and Lightning. We've also made product changes to Provar to make it easier for us to warn you when we think you're running in the wrong mode. If your user starts off in Lightning, but we think your test wants you to run in Classic, we'll let you know that. And Michael's going to talk more about that later. The next enhancement is more functional. So within Winter 20, Salesforce have now made the opportunity contact role and account teams first-class S-object citizens, if you like. So that means that developers and admins can now customize the appearance of those. The other impact is if you were running on Summer 19, any default columns in related lists that you had there before that you may have mapped will probably have changed as soon as you get upgraded to Winter 20. Regardless of that, your admins may actually customize which columns appear, and Provar 1912 does actually read the metadata for the opportunity contact roles and the account teams and is able to cope with those changes. The other thing to think about is if you're not already having test coverage for these items because they're out the box, that your admins and developers can now add business logic, can now add custom fields, buttons, change the page layouts, have additional processing, Apex code, workflows, all on these objects. So this may be an area you need to check with your Salesforce implementation team to see if they're planning to make any changes so that you have test coverage within your Provar pack. Next, I want to talk about permission set groups. So this is a beta feature. Now, Salesforce beta feature is a kind of unofficial release. That means that you won't get any support from Salesforce if you have a problem with it, or so they say. My experience is they have helped me. And that you will also should not use it in production. But again, many Salesforce beta features some customers do actually use in production because it's low risk. Now, traditionally, Salesforce was tested with profiles. So the concept of a different profile, maybe for a service agent or for a sales user or for a marketing manager. And then a few years ago, they added the concept of permission sets so that an individual user could be extended with additional privileges over their peers in the same profile. And that created somewhat of a problem for QA teams. Suddenly, your scope of testing was vastly increased from being just a single few set of profiles to having a whole host of different permissions that every user could be a unique combination. Permission sets kind of fixes that, and that it will allow your Salesforce admins to create permission set groups so that you can go back to the idea that you have a base profile, maybe a service agent, and then you can have a supervisor permission set group. You can have a manager permission set group, and you can bring all these things together much more easily so you can test multiple permissions in one go. The good news is Provar recognizes those permission sets, whether they're granted through a group or whether they're granted through a permission set or granted on the profile. Provar works the same way. Our recommendation for testing is to make sure you take advantage of our connection overrides for those different users. So create different users that are granted different permission set groups and use those in your connection overrides. And that's one feature you can use test plans for, which Michael's going to talk about more later. Next, I want to talk about the console dialog. So prior to Winter 20, if you had a opportunity pop-up modal pop-up, like on the right-hand side here for Gene Point, while that page was open, it was not possible to interact with anything in the background. It was truly modal. Within Winter 20, Salesforce have now bound that modality to the individual tab. So while I'm under the Gene Point opportunity, I can't interact with anything behind that, but I can interact with the Gene Point account tab. I can interact with the United Oil and Gas tab. I can interact with the list view. So that changes potentially how you want to run your tests and how you want to create your tests, especially if you're looking to mimic a real user experience. So that interaction with other console tabs is now active. And if you're using your own page objects, you may want to check what page objects you're referencing and that those page objects make sense. So for example, if I had an opportunity edit page object, I wouldn't want to mix up interaction with the all accounts list view as part of that page object. If you're not sure how to go about that, once again, please get in touch with your Provar customer success team. Lastly, I want to talk about a impact around packaging. So in the past, Salesforce had a form of packaging, now called first generation packaging, and you may have heard of them before as a managed and unmanaged packages, which were primarily aimed at ISV partners. And they give this a term of the happy soup. So all your different components, you have multiple packages that may or may not be interdependent, which you installed into a customer's org or your own org as your end user customer. And what they've moved to is something called second generation packaging. And the concept of second generation packaging, it makes it much easier to modularize your changes, to have different versions, to have dependencies between those. And Salesforce have now made the managed packaging aspect of this generally available in Winter 20. Now, Provar already works with both first and second generation namespaces, so there's no changes required in Provar to handle that. But we have recently updated our features around namespaces so that you can add and remove namespaces, and now you can even substitute one namespace for another on a selective basis. And that's incredibly useful if you're an ISV partner or an end customer and you're building packages and you build your test cases before you put your namespace on, or you want to test across different environments. One may be your development environment, another may be your staging or UAT environment, and you may choose to use different namespaces. So again, Provar can really help with that. The other useful feature is that we recently launched the pilot for Provar DX. Now, Provar DX is part of the Salesforce CLI, so it's a plugin you can install. So if you're using second generation packaging, you'll be using the Salesforce DX development lifecycle. You'll be using the Salesforce command line or a script in order to spin up your Scratch orgs and provision data and deploy changes. Now, Provar DX can work as part of that, and Mike's got a short video demo on this later. As part of your CI/CD process, you can include Provar DX instead of having to use Ant. Finally, I want to talk about Provar 2.0. So Provar 2.0 coming for Dreamforce. has new tool icons. So we've refreshed the look of Salesforce. Sorry, we haven't done that. I've refreshed the look of Provar, more in keeping with our new branding. We've also added dark and light modes to both Test Builder and the Provar desktop. Within the Test Builder, we have an ambition to make sure that you don't need to switch from Test Builder to desktop unnecessarily. So we're expanding Test Builder out with a new test palette, and we're going to gradually add more and more functions within there so that you'll be able to add a loop, add a group step, add a wait for, all within the Test Builder without having to switch back and forth. We're also, in subsequent releases, going to add things like the debugging and the variable stack into the Test Builder as well. So you can do all your test creation and editing just within the Test Builder itself. As part of that, we're going to enhance our test logging and output filtering. So I know many customers have asked for the ability to control this. So we're quite verbose in the information we give at the moment. We're going to give you the ability to turn that down or turn that logging up, depending on what you need. And we're also listening to our customers in that we're having a new patching and updating solution. So we're going to make it easier for you from within the Provar desktop to install a patch or remove a patch or upgrade your version from one version of Provar to another. So we have been working hard on that the last few months, and we're hoping to release that quite soon in the next few months. Finally, I mentioned it earlier, the Salesforce bilocators. So the purpose of these primarily is around having more robust locators for things like LWC, so that when Salesforce make changes, you don't have to make changes to your test case. Okay, that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Michael now, who's going to talk to us about what's new in Provar.
All right. Thank you, Richard. So I'm going to be covering a lot of updates here. We're primarily focused on all the updates that we've been making since 1.9.10. So we're going to get started with some of the different subject areas that we've listed here. We're going to be covering 1.9.10, 1.9.11, and 1.9.12. And first things first, we're going to talk about some of our FSL support that we've been adding, as well as some different reporting integrations that we've been adding to make Provar work better with other tools that you may be using for reporting purposes, as well as some Lightning user enhancements, some multilingual support enhancements, some edits that we've been making to the test builder so you can actually edit your steps within the test builder. And then we're going to be previewing some pilots for the test plans, Provar DX. And then lastly, I'll have a brief overview on how to integrate Docker with Provar. So firstly, I'd like to talk about the comprehensive FSL support. So this is going to be useful updates for clients that are using service objects currently to schedule ad hoc appointments. So if you want to be able to test these workflows, Provar now supports the testing of these. Previously, they were more complex, but now we have integration for that. And if your organization is using FSL to create and manage work orders, Provar can now test the functionality where users actually find and select these resources who are available within a given time range of working hours, as well as a certain geographic location. In addition to this, you can also use Provar to test the functionality where users are manually creating or booking appointments that are associated with certain work orders. Also, if you use FSL, dispatchers who use the Gantt view to easily schedule work and assign those tasks, Provar can now test several features within the Gantt view of these open appointments, and we've made it much easier to test that functionality inside of Provar. You can also use the test builder for your normal workflows if you want to test the pop-up windows that happen to appear within the dispatch console when users create or edit service appointments or service resources. So moving on now to some of our enhanced reporting integration. Firstly, we've added two different functions here to help you with your reporting integration to other tools. These two new functions are going to help provide more detailed error information when test failures occur during a test run. So the first one here is test case errors, which is just going to return a list of errors in a more detailed fashion for an individual test case. And then we have test run errors, which is going to return a list of test run errors for the entire run if there are multiple test cases. Using these functions, you can write back more detailed error information into other tools or other applications you might be wanting to integrate as part of your testing, such as Salesforce itself, if you have a reporting database, or if you're using an Excel sheet, or maybe you're using TestRail or Zephyr or something to that effect to keep track of these errors. And for our users who happen to be using Micro Focus ALM, which was formerly HP ALM, we've added a settings file that allows you to add new tags and specify reporting options within that file that you may require. And after you apply these settings to your project, these reports will be uploaded automatically to your ALM based on the reporting options that you have specified. And if you'd like more information on that, we have a link here at the bottom that has more information on how to integrate ALM with Provar. Moving on now to our Lightning user experience enhancements. So for the activity timelines, we've added support to simplify the process of building out your tests so that you can evaluate if your activity logs are performing correctly. And the big note on this is that Lightning and Classic timelines are both supported, so that if you switch back and forth, you won't have to build out a new test case for these. Richard alluded earlier to the automatic Lightning enablement feature. So Provar is now automatically detecting whether you have a Classic or a Lightning connection. And a small note on that, you do not have to make any changes to your current test cases to take advantage of this new feature. As long as you're on the latest version, this will automatically be done. Provar is also now defaulting to Lightning enabled whenever you create a new Salesforce connection or if you create a new Salesforce project. And I want to spend a bit of time talking about the new merge case feature that Salesforce has recently added, which is currently in the beta phase. So we've now allowed you to build a test case out, and this is available in the list view and the case view record. So Provar now supports these features. So I have a couple screenshots to go along with that. So merge cases is still a relatively new feature, but the workflow is entirely testable now in Provar. And you can see by the screenshot here, this is from the case view screen. So this is where we're adding a test case to actually click the merge cases button from the case view screen, which will then lead you into the next screen here that you see, which is where you select the case duplicates that you would like to merge. This screen is also entirely testable within Provar. And then our next screen here, previously these case number hyperlinks were not testable, but you can now click these hyperlinks within the compare case screen if you want to drill down into those cases and actually see more details on those. In addition to that, the radio buttons that you see here are selectable and addable to a test case within Provar. And then this is the final screen for your confirm merging those test cases. Once that's done, you then have your full workflow built inside of the test builder. So as part of the Salesforce Summer 19 release, they gave administrators the option to choose to display a related list using the existing default mode that you're familiar with, or you also now have the enhanced related list display that allows you to display up to 10 records, and you can also sort these records by name. You can resize them, you can perform mass actions on them, and you can even wrap text if you like. And all this is to say Provar now supports the testing of these new displays. Moving on now to our multilingual support. So in addition to supporting these following languages, it's good to note that you can build tests and execute tests in all of the supported languages. So rather than just building your tests in English and then converting it over to your target language that you would like to actually execute it in, you can both build, create, and run in any supported language. This is obviously useful because whenever you want to map steps and change the system language, you no longer have to remap these test steps in your test builder. And going further than that, as part of our commitment for helping out all the different languages that our customers would like to support, you can map and execute test steps involving the Path Assistant feature within the test builder in any supported language. And lastly, you can also now map the related list quick links within the test builder in any supported language as well. And a note on that, if your language is not supported on this list, please reach out to us individually so that we can see about getting that included in a future release. So I want to talk a little bit about the test builder edit mode and some of the enhancements we've been making to make the test builder work better in terms of not having to go back and forth between Provar desktop, editing your steps, saving it, and then going back into the test builder. So I want to give you a quick demo on how we can demonstrate some of these different bullet points that I've highlighted here. So I have my test builder open and I have my Salesforce sandbox org that I have loaded up here. So what I'm going to do is just show you a quick example of how you can just edit any test step inside of the test builder. So I'm going to clicking this new button. This is going to work the same way as before. There's no difference here in adding a new step. What I'm going to do differently, however, is you may not have been aware before, whenever you want to add a screenshot to a step that you've already added, you would have to go back to Provar and add that screenshot option and then save the test case there, and then obviously rerun the test step from the test builder itself. What you can do now instead is you can actually edit the test step within the test builder, and I can include that screenshot now. So if I want to add a screenshot to this test step, I can do that here. And I also have the option to change the interaction type for this test step. I'm going to leave it as it is for now. So if you save and do that test step, it's actually going to re-perform that action. And then if I go to Provar, we can see that here are the screenshots that were actually generated from my test step that was edited. And they're going to look similar because the screen was already there. But you can see how you can edit the test steps in Test Builder and include those screenshots at a later time. What I'm going to show you now is how you can edit the UI assertions and the with row locators that Provar uses. So say I wanted to interact and do a UI assertion on one of the rows in this table here. I can right click on this first row here on this account name and add it to my test case. I'm going to use a row number locator, and what I'm going to do is change this interaction type to assert. So I want to assert this expected value. So no difference there if you've ever used UI assertions. What I'm going to do now, however, is I'm going to show you how you can edit that row locator that I was just using within the test builder to grab a different row from that table. So I'm going to right click and edit that step. So previously I used the first row in that table with my locator here. I'm going to change this to use the third row. And I'm going to step forward now. And what we'll see now is that UI assertion will of course fail because I'm asserting the previous value from a different row. So what I want to do is actually show you now how you can update that UI assertion straight from the test builder itself. So you can't change the field name, but what you can change, as I mentioned before, is the interaction type. What I also want to highlight here in the updates with our test builder is this expected value field was previously not accessible from the content assist feature. You can now prompt the content assist within the expected value field. And this is very useful because I may want to be using a variable instead. So rather than going back to Provar, creating that variable and editing the test step there, saving it, navigating back here and continuing my workflow, I can do it all within the test builder. I can utilize that account name variable, and now my assertion is passing. Okay, so that's all I wanted to show on the test builder updates. I want to go back to my slides here to continue on to the test plans pilot. So test plans are a new feature that were recently included in Provar 1912. It is currently in pilot phase. However, test plans are designed to help you, as it says, accelerate the software release cycle. And the way that we're doing this is, for those of you that maybe previously been using the Ant remote execution to queue off your Provar tests on some kind of CI/CD pipeline, you can go from multiple build files to a single test plan that'll help you to encapsulate all the different elements that you want to test. So if you want to test different environments, different browser overrides, and test plans, we've made it much easier to group these tests up for execution across these different elements and events. So that way you can test your UAT, your regression, your smoke testing, all the different phases of testing you can include in a single test plan rather than having multiple build files reflect all these different combinations. And again, if you would like to utilize this feature, just contact us and we can help you learn about how to access this feature in Provar 1912. It is disabled by default, but there is a small change that you must make to your configuration. And then once that's done, you will have access to the Provar test plans. So what I want to show you now is how you can utilize and how you can create a test plan within Provar. So right now in my navigator, I have a sandbox folder, which has a list of test cases with some subfolders there that you can see. So we have some basic Salesforce objects here. So what I want to do is create a couple test plans to run these test cases in some different environments or different browsers. So you'll see a plans folder here. And with the test plans feature enabled, I now have the option to create a new test plan. So I'm going to create one now. give it a good name there. From here, you can select the different outputs that you want to include in that test plan. For those of you that have used the ANT execution, you should be familiar with the PDF report and the pie chart that we include. Those are going to be the same. You'll be able to edit those in the following screen on what you want to include. And then for the notifications, right now the only supported notification is the email. However, we are going to be expanding this to include both Slack and Salesforce chatter notifications as well. In addition to that, there's going to be a new reporting section where you can actually export your test plan report to TestRail, Zephyr, ALM, different tools of that nature. So I'm going to click Finish. This is going to create my test plan, and you'll notice you'll get some different options here to configure for all of your different outputs, your notifications, and then at the top here, your different configuration. So this is where you could select the test environment that you want to specify. So for those of you that are using connection overrides within Provar, you'll be familiar with using different test environments to change the connection that Provar is using to connect to your Salesforce org. So you can do that within your test plan. You can also change the target browser that you would like to target for the entire test plan, so that way you don't have to change it for each individual test case. And a small note on that here, these are going to be defaulted to inherit mode, and what that means is whenever I actually add my test cases to this test plan, you'll see that each child will just inherit from the parent folder. And that'll be more clear here in a minute when I add my test cases. At any point in time, if you would like to disable or enable your different outputs, you can check them here or uncheck them. And if you would like to remove them entirely, we do have the option to do that. If you just click the red X on the end there, that'll remove the output entirely from your test plan. You can, of course, add it back with the green plus here at the top, and my pie chart is now back into my test plan. And you'll see the PDF output options are the same as before whenever you were doing your ANT execution. All those options there will be exactly the same. So my email notification, I'm going to go ahead and set this to use my email address and what I would like to do in my body. So the body of the email notification is HTML supported, so you can use any HTML formatting that you wish here. What I want to do is insert my output artifacts into this email body. So we have that option here. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my pie chart image, and then I want to insert my execution report. A small note on inserting the execution report, this is actually going to attach it as an attachment for that email, and then the pie chart will just be an image within the email body itself. You can also include some different environment variables in your email notification. So say I want to just give a high level overview of a list of all the tests that succeeded, that were failed, and maybe the tests that were skipped. So this is a perfectly sufficient test plan. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and close it out for now. What I want to do, so now that I have my test plan created, I want to add some test cases to it so that way I can utilize actually running the test plan. So how to do that is you just drag the folder that contains the test cases you would like to add into the test plan. And what you'll see here is the folder structure is actually replicated what you see down below in my test folder. The only difference here is all the test cases have been converted to a test instance, and this is just an instance of the test case that defines how you want the test case to run. At the parent level, I'm going to set the target environment to dev, and I'm going to set the target web browser to Chrome. So what this is going to do is that every folder underneath the sandbox folder is going to inherit from these two settings here. And I'm going to rename this particular test plan to reflect my changes so that way I can see exactly what it's doing. And say I want to create another configuration to run these test cases on another web browser. I'm going to drag in the test cases again, and you'll see the same folder structure reflected there. And I'm actually going to edit the top level here to run the same test environment. But instead of Chrome, I'm going to run these test cases under Firefox. Now, these didn't have to be the same test cases, but this is just an example to show how you would do that. Great, so now I have two different test plans with the same list of test cases. So what I can do is target the Provar webinar root folder here, and I can actually run the tests straight from here. What this is going to do is it's going to run both plans under both configurations. So all the test cases in the sandbox folder will have been run under Chrome and under Firefox. And there we go, we have a success. So all the test cases are complete and we can see that there. So that was just a small overview of how you could utilize test plans. And this of course eliminates the need to have multiple build files and have multiple configurations predetermined and pre-configured to make use of that feature. Moving on now to Provar DX Pilot. So as Richard mentioned before, this is a Salesforce CLI plugin. So I'm going to give a quick video demo of how it works. But essentially what this is going to do is utilizing the Salesforce Scratch orgs. This is going to allow you to run your Provar test cases within those Scratch orgs without having to install and configure Ant. So you target a certain user, you target the test cases that you would like to include in that run. And all this is done through the command line. And of course, normally you'd be running this in headless mode, but just to make it clear what's happening here, we've done it in the actual browser mode so you could see it executing. And there we go. In regards to documentation, there is documentation on the Provar DX. However, the quick start guide in order to be able to start using it is still in progress. So if you would like to utilize this feature and access it in your current version of Provar, just contact us and we can help you get that going. All right, some other CI&C updates. So Docker, for those of you that are familiar, allows you to spin up a machine instance via the command line or otherwise with all of the necessary installed software and environment settings. So this, of course, prevents you from having to update and maintain all those different remote servers that you may be wanting to use for Provar headless execution. So if you have Jenkins servers with all your Provar Ant files, every time Provar updates our Ant files, you have to update those files as well. So instead, we've updated a Docker file that Provar is managing to run your test cases remotely inside of a Docker container. And for more information on that, we do have a help page on how to get access to this Docker file, as well as integrating it into your test projects. All right, so that are all the updates that I have for now. I'm going to hand it back over to Hetty, who's going to talk more about the customer success community.
Fantastic, thanks Michael. So chaps, we are going to be going to questions shortly. So if you still like to ask a question you haven't yet, then now's a great time to go ahead and type that out into the questions box. But the final thing we wanted to cover today is a little bit of news on a new development for our customers, which is our new Provar Success community. So this community is really designed to give customers a new and more streamlined way of accessing your support options, as well as providing access to other areas of interest such as downloads and recent Provar announcements. Now, this is going to be replacing Provar's existing service desk solution. So for our customers who are currently using our service desk, we will be migrating you across onto the new community. And we'll be phasing the community in gradually, starting from the 16th of October. So this is just to give you a quick heads up that will be happening. We will be sharing more information on this shortly to explain how you can access the community and how you can navigate the different areas. So look forward to some more comms from us on that one.